Alright, here we go. Let's see. First thing is to paste the stream link into the Immersive Railroading Discord. Okay, here we go. Take me just a minute to get set up here. Alright. Probably going to give it another couple minutes and then get started. Probably 2 more minutes until 1, which is when I guess I said it was going to start. Alright, 1 more minute and we'll get started here. Okay, let's get started. This will be recorded, so I'll be sending this link out so that some of the other developers can watch it who can't be on the stream right now. So, the main excuse me, the main reason I wanted to do this stream is immersive railroading has changed fairly drastically over the past 6 months or so. Some of you who've seen previous streams, I think the last one was about a month ago, I've been changing a lot under the hood. So, real quick, I want to start off with where immersive railroading has moved to. Pulling up a different browser window that I can drag over. There we go. So, excuse me. As a team, we've started adding more repositories in addition to just immersive railroading. Most of which are currently only tied into immersive railroading, but some which are used by other mods. Previously, this was all under my personal GitHub account. I moved it into Team Open Industry. The name was suggested by Wrong Weekend on Discord. But we have a couple other projects that will be, hopefully over the next year or two, coming to fruition. We haven't actually started anything other than rough planning on them, but hopefully some of the work that's happened over the last 6 months will make that a little bit more reasonable. Let's see. Got some comments. Yeah. Thanks. I'm glad. I'm just reading some of the comments on the side. Love your mod, by the way. Is a work of art. The code I like to think of as art, but I've got to give the modelers credit. They do an amazing job, and there's such a variety that most people can find something that they like and fits the style they like. Alright, back to development. I still need to invite the other team members to this. It's been a little bit chaotic over the past 2 or 3 weeks. But the good news is this stream comes on the tail end of releasing a 1.12 test version to people on the Immersive Railroading Discord. If you're interested and you haven't signed up for being having the test notifier role, message me or one of the other moderators in Immersive Railroading in the Discord chat, and we'll get you added to that list. So you get a ping every time that we have something new that we're ready to test but isn't fully ready for release yet. Usually you want to back up your world and things of that nature. But you also get to play with the newest features and give direct feedback on how your hardware likes the changes we're making. Okay, so a bunch of different repositories. I'm going to start going over the structure. Immersive Railroading, this is the same repo that you've created issues in and in some cases get early releases from. This is where all the development has happened. But going forward, Immersive Railroading is really just Immersive Railroading. There is not a single piece of code in here that directly ties itself to Minecraft Forge or Minecraft itself, which is kind of cool. This means theoretically you could set it up to use, let's say, any other LWJGL-based voxel game. Now, it's not necessarily as trivial as just plugging it in, but Immersive Railroading, the only thing that it understands is that it has this integration library and that it has this universal mod core. Universal mod core is something that I hope to share with other developers by the time the new year comes around. It's still built in such a way that it really only works with one mod at a time, but theoretically you could use it with multiple. Now, Universal Mod Core, we have a bunch of different branches here. Each one of these branches corresponds to a different Minecraft version, and even in some cases different Minecraft loaders. These different loaders have different purposes. Most people are familiar with Minecraft Forge. That's what people have used for years now. I apologize, there's a siren going by. So recently I backported Forge 1.7.10 just for fun, kind of to test how my abstractions were going to handle this sort of these sorts of changes. I mean, 1.7.10 is drastically different than 1.10.2 and these three right here. In addition, I also ported to Fabric 1.14.4. I started on Forge 1.14.4, but they've removed enough stuff and broken enough stuff that it wasn't really worth the time and effort right now. Fabric is a really nice mod loader. If you haven't checked it out, I would highly recommend it. It gives mod developers a lot more flexibility and control over what actually happens. You may, in the end, see features that are only available inside Fabric 1.14.4 that are really just implemented as non-operations in Forge down the line. So, those are the different branches, and Immersive Railroading depends directly on ModCore. ModCore is what you port to different versions of Minecraft, different mod loaders, and potentially even different games down the line if someone ever is inclined to spend the time and effort doing that. Immersive Railroading integration is where the code for a particular Minecraft version gets tied into compatibility mods. This is anything from Track API to Open Computers to Computercraft to Immersive Engineering to in-game Wikimod. This changes for every version that it gets ported to. I actually have not created a 1.14 fork of this code yet, and I'll do that at some point in the next week or so. But you can see how it lines up. So you have a mod core, an integration, and a Track API version that all kind of go together for a particular version of Minecraft, the mod loader, and yeah. In Immersive Railroading, there's one version of the code. That's it. I will be going through and deleting these 1.11 and 1.10 branches inside of here. So the cool part is when you write code for Immersive Railroading, and it compiles and it works and it runs, it should work on any version of Minecraft that ModCore supports. That's one of the reasons that it's been kind of radio silence for the past 6 months, and why we haven't had a major update. Hopefully we're getting away from that model. Part of the stream is to get the other developers up to speed. Oh, Friedrich just said hey. Friedrich does some really insane stuff, and you'll keep an eye out on his GitHub. There's some interesting stuff that's probably coming to Immersive Railroading and to some of his own mods. Hi, Bradley, and Ashley, and Bence. Okay, back to development. At this point, you should now have a rough understanding of how this stuff fits together. Oh, and one more kind of note. There is certain legacy resource packs and models that are kind of work in progress. I've moved those into immersive railroading assets to make the main repository a little bit smaller, just because it's 2 gigs right now to clone down, which depending on your internet connection can take a while. So, immersive railroading has no Forge or Minecraft code. Let's take a look at actually spinning up a development environment that does pull that stuff in, so you can actually boot up a copy of Minecraft when you're trying to work with or develop immersive railroading. So over here, I have pulled up a terminal, and previously I had some stuff in my immersive railroading directly, so I removed it. So for those of you who aren't familiar, I run on a Linux machine. These steps are very similar on Windows, and I actually do have a Windows machine set up to show some of what you have to go through. But the steps that you follow are relatively similar. So the last thing I did is I did a git clone at GitHub, Team Open Industry, immersiverailroading.git. So that cloned into the immersive railroading folder. So if I cd immersive railroading, I do an ls, here is everything that actually corresponds with this right here. This is the version that's on GitHub. This is the version that that other people can pull down. This is my own local copy of immersive railroading that is based off of this. And theoretically, the instructions that I'm using on my Linux machine should work with anyone who has a Mac as well. Windows is just a little bit special, a little bit different. I like my freedom, so I run Linux, but other people like Windows because of the long-term compatibility that a lot of programs are locked into. Anyways, before I get off onto a religious rant about that, let's get into developing. So you can see there's these 2 files here, setup.ps1 and setup.sh. The sh version is for Linux and Mac. The setup.ps1, that is a PowerShell script that runs on Windows. I will show you how to execute it, but I won't actually execute it because my virtual machine is so slow we'd be sitting here waiting for a good half an hour. Windows isn't necessarily that much slower than Linux, but the way I have it set up as kind of a machine inside of a machine is not set up in an optimized fashion. So let's go through the steps. This is a fresh checkout. All I did was download the code and start the stream. All right, so we can do bash setup.sh. And now there's different arguments that happen here. The only one that currently works is Forge 1.12.2. The other ones, I've made some breaking changes, and I need to port the changes over to 1.11 and 1.10 and all the others. So by default, it takes the argument Forge 1.12.2, but if you forget it, it'll automatically default to Forge 1.12.2. And this corresponds with this branch name. Sorry, wrong thing. Corresponds with this branch name here, because all the repos are lined up based on that key. So you can see it does some stuff. It clones a few other repositories and gets you set up. One thing to note is if you look at this git clone, it's a git at URL. So if you're going to be doing this, you need to, if you're on Windows, you need to have this git bash. So if you search, the Git for Windows, there is a program for that, and unfortunately, because of the way I've set this up, this does not really work well with the GitHub client. So let me clear the screen here, and if I notepad. Oh, I don't know where any of this stuff is. Oh, it's been a while. Let's open up the git bash here. So long story short, I'm getting into the weeds first. What's going on is to authenticate with GitHub as my user, my Cam72Cam user, I have set up keys. So if I go to my settings, and I need to change this because I don't work there anymore, and I go over to SSH and GPG keys. These keys are what's set up to authenticate myself, so GitHub knows that this key corresponds with me on this machine. So PowerShell, or PowerShell as I called it, is this machine over here. I ran a command ssh-keygen over here. I'm not going to run it now because it'll overwrite the keys. And it creates this sshidrsa.pub. There's also an sshidrsa file, but that has private stuff in it that you don't share it with anyone. The pub is, you can think about it as the pub is, I always get the, just Google RSA encryption if you're curious what these two files are. Long story short, don't share the private one, but you can use, so the public one, if I cat this is like sharing the lock, but I only have the key. So the one without the pub on it is the key, and I keep the key, and I don't share the key, but I give other people locks so they can verify that it's me, if that makes any sense. I don't want to go too deep into this, but the long story short is you take this thing, you come over here, you click new SSH key, and you paste it in here. Now what happens is when you do a git clone, or you push, or you want to authenticate as yourself, it automatically does that using that key pair. Sure. Okay. So we've run this, and it has cloned down Immersive Railroading Integration, Universal Mod Core, and Track API. I currently use Eclipse, so I've got the instructions set up for Eclipse. I use IntelliJ IDEA. But if you want to use Eclipse, a lot of this is just replace IDEA with Eclipse and run the same commands, except for this last one here. So just for the sake of time, I'm just going to stick them in this file and execute that file. This is the same thing as running all those commands by hand. So what this is doing is this is setting up my local development environment, setting up, what this is going to do is this is going to download a version of Minecraft that I can build against. It's going to set up my editor so that it can run a debug version of Minecraft and link all the code together in the new fun and special way. So this will take a minute or so to run, and once this is done, I'll open up my development environment and show you what steps you need to take to get this going. If all you wanted was to build a jar, you don't actually need to run these initial Gradle steps. All you would need to do is run the same Gradle W command, which would look something like this: Gradle W build, and this will create a jar that goes inside of lib or build. Apparently I haven't built it yet, but it goes in build lib. Okay. This is still going. So it's just going to take a minute or so. You only need to do this when you're setting up for a particular version of Forge or Fabric, or essentially a particular version of Minecraft. I'm also feeling a little bit sick today, so I may be stumbling over my words a little bit. So normally I'd like to hop on the stream longer and go through and do some development and show what's up and some of the cool stuff that's in progress, but I just want to get this out, and I'll probably sign off after that. Okay. Thanks, Tigerbird, for trying to help explain that in the chat. Yeah. Okay. So this is all run. Excuse me. And I'm at the point where I can open up my IDE. So I open up IntelliJ. This would be the same thing as if you were opening up Eclipse. Once you get into the IDE, it's a little bit different in each, but it's a little bit different. Oh, I already have it open. Let me close it and reopen it in the right window. There we go. I also need to update that. That's an old version. And it opened up in the wrong window. Come on. Okay, so right now my editor is trying to understand what's in the current directory, understanding how the packages are built and all that information. So once it does this, it's going to say, hey, there's a Gradle. And Gradle is a tool that helps you link packages together and build jars in Java. It does stuff with other things as well, but for what we're doing, oh, actually, sorry, this is the wrong one. This is the one that I did not have set up for the stream. Let's open, workspace. This is just where my local stuff lives. Immersive railroading. Okay. So this directory here, oh, nope, sorry. It was in the stream directory. There we go. This is this folder right here corresponds with this one right here. So, and there's some stuff in here that it should auto-detect, like the IPR and the IWS. All right, there we go. So it said, okay, there's a Gradle project. This is the thing that knows how to build Minecraft, knows how to build jars for Minecraft and this sort of stuff. Both Forge and Fabric provide Gradle configurations for their respective environments. So we click import and OK, and it should be setting up now. And see, it's doing stuff. Watching it do some spinamathinging. All right. Cool. So if I click build here, or this is the debug button, it should launch Minecraft, theoretically. There's some warnings in the code because I haven't bothered to ignore them. And we're booting up Minecraft. There we go. So that is how you get to the initial loading screen. Well, it'll show up in a sec. One thing you'll notice over here is this really isn't that nice to browse. You can see there's stuff in all these different folders, and you have to navigate through and figure out where everything actually lives. What I tend to do is come over to this packages view, and this shows, let me make sure that I'm not running out of resources. No, I'm good. Okay. So over here we've got our assets, which is the immersive railroading assets. We've got immersive railroading and the mod core inside of here. And interestingly enough, third party, even though it lives inside of a separate repository, will still show up in this structure, which is fun. And of course, Track API. The nice thing about this is I can go in here and edit this stuff. So I can edit Track API live. And let's say, actually, once this loads, I'm actually going to quit it, and I want to show checking out a in development branch, so you can be working with stuff that's in progress. Alright, so this is loaded. I could load a world, but it's not the point of the talk today. So, yes, this folder. So as you can see, we now have an immersive integration folder inside of here, a Track API folder, and a universal mod core folder. There's currently a Track API branch that supports yada yada yada. What does it support? Better minecart track. So if you take a look at Track API, just as an example, you do the same exact process with immersive railroading integration or mod core if you're working on that. So Minecraft Rail. This right here isn't actually implemented properly, so it can only do east-west and north-south. But if you've been watching the development channel in Discord, you'll see that I posted a screenshot of, or not, a little video of that working around turns and going up and down slopes. So if we go over to Track API, branch -a, so this will show all the branches that it knows about. We can get checkout. So right now we are on Forge 1.12, so we want to check out MC Rails compat. So now we switched from pointing at the Forge 1.12 code to pointing at the MC Rails compat code. So this code is actually based off of the Forge 1.12.2 code. There we go. Let's see. So this is the Forge 1.12.2 code, and you can see there's a couple different branches up here. So this is like the Forge and Fabric ports, but up here, this is our branch here, this MC Rails compat. This isn't the best graph view, but it kind of gives you an idea of Git works like a tree as you're going through. And I just checked the chat. Tigerbird is saying that IntelliJ 2019 changes the Gradle import process. Awesome. So if that's significantly different, I'll probably do another stream or post some comments. Yeah, that is fun. I will need to do that. I'm not going to upgrade IntelliJ right here. I mean, the good news is it does appear to work in Windows, which should be. I think this is a much newer version. So that's a 2019.2, so that does seem to work. It does require some different steps and doesn't work exactly as well. But that does explain some of the weirdness I've been seeing. Thanks for the heads up. So we switched branches back there, so that when I ran the git checkout MC Rails compat, that switched me over to the code that is part of that branch. Excuse me. And if we take a look at this, the code here has actually changed. There's different code inside of the Track API folder now. And this code deals with all these different cases. It looks a lot different. And if we boot up Minecraft, it should work. One other thing that I want to show, as part of setting up your development environment, there's ways of doing this in Eclipse. Go pester Friedrich LP about this. He's done this in the past with Eclipse. But you can set up a hot reload. And I'll show an example of that in a minute. Let me try and figure out what a good example for that would be. Let's do something silly like making the wrench really big. Let's go into render, item. Where's the stock item, rail item, cast item? Let's just do stock item. Let's make the stock item really, really big. So we'll boot up the code and show it working normally, and then I'll modify it on the fly without restarting the game. Let's, while we're waiting for this to load, where's the... So there's a setting right here. There we go. Let's go take a look at this config. So this hot swapper config in the IntelliJ settings is here. So in the key map, we have reload changes. I've mapped it to numpad divide. And hot swap, these options are turned on, which is cool. So if I come over here, I don't currently have a world, so let's set one up. Let's just be boring and do super flat for now. World, there we go. Okay, so here's all the fun stuff. So, here's our train item. It's on the ground. Let's make it stupidly large. So, this is also a good place to kind of talk about how ModCore changes things. Anytime you're interacting with anything that would traditionally be a Minecraft construct, you're dealing with the ModCore version. So before we actually change the code, let's take a look at where this function is called. So I kind of jumped right into the code, but Immersive Railroading extends ModCore mod. And if we take a look, sorry, I need to turn off this music because it's going to drive me nuts. There we go. Okay. So if we take a look at this, this is where all of Immersive Railroading is initialized. The way that Forge usually does it is you have multiple loading events that get hit by different functions and proxies and all sorts of nonsense. I've gotten rid of all that. Or rather, I've made an abstraction so you don't have to care about any of that. So inside of common events, so common is something that happens on both the client and the server when it's starting up. Construct is where you do all of your registration. So we're registering entities, we're registering multi-blocks, we're registering packets, blocks, and items, and commands. Initialize for common sets up the config, sets up some config file mappings, and then this is what actually loads the Immersive Railroading definitions, and this calls into the compat loader, which lives inside of the integrations. And inside of finalize, it does some stuff that happens just before the splash screen shows up, like the main Minecraft menu. Client events is stuff that you only want to run on the client, so we're rendering registries and all sorts of stuff. inside of here. Traditionally, you'd have to figure out 5 different places to register entities and packets and all sorts of stuff. I've lumped them all together and deal with all that fun jazz behind the scenes, which is different for every single Minecraft version and different between different mod loaders. So we're saying, hey, when you are trying to register a locomotive Steam, use this thing here. And when you hit a key, do this. So here's where it actually binds all the different keys and sets the defaults. And we do some audio setup. But again, none of this directly touches Minecraft code. If you look at, so let's say I wanted to inspect, what's a good example? Packet registry. So if we look at this function, this lives inside of ModCore. This actually imports Minecraft stuff. But if I were to look at the Fabric version of this, this imports the Fabric equivalents, but the Immersive Railroading code does not care how it's implemented. All it cares is that it works the same way, which is remarkably powerful. It took 6 months of some pretty crazy development to get to that point, but now that it exists, I don't really ever have to worry about porting to versions again when I change major features. It's only when I'm adding drastically new functionality inside of ModCore that we even have to start thinking about that. So what we have here is we go to Client, Construct, Item Register. We were dealing with the stock get model and get icon. So there's actually 2 functions here. Get icon is also kind of cool. I'll talk about that if I feel like I've got time toward the end. If you're curious about get icon, take a look at the last stream I did. I think that's stream number 6. So what we're saying is, hey, item renderer, when this item needs to be rendered, the item rolling stock, call this get model function, which will return a standard model. With different versions of Minecraft and all sorts of wonderful stuff inside of there, you deal with either baked quads or rendering blocks directly or whatever. Inside of Immersive Railroading, I still need to be able to render blocks. Like if I try and place a piece of track that has a rail bed that's some other mod's block, I need to be able to render that, but I don't want Immersive Railroading code to understand how Minecraft blocks are rendered. I want it to understand how a generic concept of a block is rendered, if that makes any sense. So I have a standard model inside of ModCore, and all the public functions inside of here are relatively safe and only deal with ModCore constructs. I've even gone to the point where I don't expose Minecraft's math directly, because they change it between versions, which is ridiculous. They've renamed functions and swapped them in stupid ways that has broken stuff in fantastic. Yeah. I blame Forge Fabric and all of the above. I mean, it's a situation that you can't win if you're trying to deal with it directly. So, for example, for 1.10.2, these fields are named differently. So that means if I wasn't using ModCore, every single instance of some vector.x inside of the Immersive Railroading code needs to be changed to xcord. And sure, you can try and do a find and replace, but when you have 25, so that's probably close to 30,000 lines of code, doing that and not breaking anything is really hard, and that's one of the simplest examples I can give. So this is just trying to explain why there's why I wrap everything and abstract everything the way I do. For the casual user or even an add-on developer, you probably don't care about this as much, but this is kind of a overview of that. If you wanted to dig into the code, if you want to start developing with Immersive Railroading, it's good that you understand what's going on behind the scenes, even if you're not touching it. Okay. I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit, so I'm going to have to cut to the chase here, which is probably a good thing. Okay, so we create a new standard model, which is a concept that can render an item, a block, or a combination thereof, or just random stuff. And we add a custom function, which is this thing right here. And it takes an item stack, and with this item stack, an item stack is an item, some metadata, and a count, for those of you who aren't familiar. So we get the scale, and we get the definition, and all this fun stuff. So we figure out what model we want to render, we figure out what texture We make sure that texturing is turned on, that cull faces is turned off. These are just OpenGL options that we restore when we're done so that we're not polluting the global state. We back up the current view, or drawing view, or matrix. If you're not familiar with OpenGL, this is kind of a way of saving the current rotation and translation system and then restoring it later on. So I can do all sorts of fun operations and rotate and translate and scale. And then when I'm done, it restores everything back to the way it was so I don't pollute the next person who's working with these same constructs. So we translate to location, we rotate, we scale, we rotate, we scale, we bind a texture, we draw, and we restore. So that's what's going on here. So the fun part is items actually have so by default they have one renderer. But for item stacks like this, sometimes you actually want two different renders. This is actually a 2D icon. This gets back to the previous stream I did. This is not a 3D model. This was rendered during Minecraft startup to a flat image. Excuse me. And this is only rendering a simple little image right here. It's not rendering a 3D model, which is really cool, which means that the performance, I could have 1,000 of these on the screen and I wouldn't see any significant performance impact, which is pretty cool. So the thing though is I want to be able to go like this. I want to, when I'm holding it in my hand, if I just saw a 2D picture there, it would look horrible. So what I do is I switch it out. So depending on how it's rendering, I'll actually render using a different function. So Steve currently has his hand deep inside the firebox and is burning his fingertips off. Okay. So we are currently running this render function. So let's change it. So this is our scale. So scale is how big or small the object you're rendering is. So let's multiply it by 10. Well, let's do something simple. Let's multiply by 2. And I hit my reload key. You'll see it's building, copying, and once this finishes, usually it's a little bit quicker than this. Oh, this is a new repo, so it's going to take a little bit longer. Once you do this the first time, it doesn't take as long. And hot swap. It's thinking. Almost there. Come on. Okay. Apparently it reloaded all of the classes. And that is significantly bigger. So without having to restart the game, we made this thing render a lot larger. Let's say we want to not use the icon texture. Let's switch that to not being an icon. And let's multiply this by 5. So this should, because it's normally I scale it down to 0.2, but if you multiply by 5, that should bring it back to 1, because 0.2 times 5 is 1. So that's usually how quick it takes. So it reloaded one class, took 3 or 4 seconds, and oh my gosh, Steve is carrying the whole darn thing around, which is fun. Yeah. So let's pick that back up, and it's ridiculous. Let's undo our changes. Okay, save that, hit the reload button, and we come back over, and everything's back to normal. Woo! Alright, that is the majority of what I wanted to show today. Let me think about if there's anything else. There's still some stuff that's not fully exposed, like this right here I should be scaling down so it doesn't render ridiculously in the GUI, but should only be huge when you've got it in your hand, so that when you're hitting stuff it's a giant piece of steel. Though unfortunately it goes out of render distance, which is kind of silly. I could probably find a way to hack that. Yeah. So, ooh, I need to fix that. Alright, let's see, are there any other questions from the stream? I don't think so. Let's see, is there anything else that I need to go over? I think that's about it, to be honest. I'll hang out for a few more minutes and take some. If you've got any questions on anything else I'm working on, timescales, or any features you're curious about, feel free to ask now. But I'll probably sign off within a few minutes, as I'm not feeling 100%. Oh, excuse me. Oh, one thing that I didn't share is inside of PowerShell that there should, so you're going to, like, if I was going to do this, I would run setup.ps1 inside of here, and that would set up this repository. I've already done it, and this machine is slow, so I don't want to do it again. But that's what goes on inside of there. Let's see. Let's, because I'm running the version of IR that should support, or the version of Track API that should support tracks, or Rail. And support is a fairly loose word. Supporting something like this is really just one of those, we kind of do, so if you're using really small stock, it works okay. But if you're using something like a big boy or something like that, it's really not going to be happy. So let's do something tiny like the A5 switcher. This is a perfect model to try this with. Which actually will not work because... Also, why is my key bindings not working? Ooh, right, that's something else I need to fix. I broke that. Increase throttle. Decrease throttle. Zero throttle. Who needs brakes? Okay, so now I've got key bindings, but nothing is actually happening, which is kind of fun. So here's an example of, because I don't have a config UI yet, I can hot reload the config on the fly. So if we go to config, oop, this is wrong IDE. If we go to config, and we go to config balance fuel required equals false. So we can turn this off dynamically. I could edit the config file and restart Minecraft, but for development, this is faster. Theoretically speaking. Huh. That should have worked. Let's see if I can blow myself up here. Single bucket of water. Actually, I should duplicate that real quick. I'm going to try hot loading the boiler. Don't try this at home. So, but the good, I mean, if you didn't see the previous stream, the nice thing is immersive railroading now requires a lot less resources. So, Ivan, who is talking about having trouble running the latest versions, it's going to be a lot easier to run the latest version of immersive railroading after ModCore comes out because of the way that models are rendered. It only uses the resources that are currently required at any given time. Alright, that's going to go in the red list. There we go. There we go. Okay. Whee! Bum. It's not going to be pretty, but it's going to work. I don't actually have a brake set up because I broke the key bindings. Let's see. I can't actually stop this, now that I think about it. I mean, I could do this. It should stop on that, and then I can place the tracks under. Let's throw a few more things here. I also need to fix some of this blinkiness. Actually, let me just... Okay. Latest Minecraft versions. Okay. Let's see how this works with a tender and a car or two. So if you're interested in being notified about any of the testing that's going on, ping one of the moderators inside... Oops. That's off the track. Inside of the Immersive Railroading Discord chat. Oh dear. Is that a bug? Nope. Okay, that seems to be working now. Let's see. Yeah, lights and some other stuff are planned at some point, but for now, they are not super high up on the list. There's other stuff that, like getting ModCore up and running, that is a little bit more important. And that's definitely a bug. Sorry, I'm just trying to get an example going. Okay, so that is now up to heat. That's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Sorry, you can see I'm not really terribly with it. Alright. Building heat. Then we'll throw the tender down. Okay. So theoretically I can place that down. And that's still going to work. Okay. Come back over here, put a bucket in here. Bucket, bucket, bucket. There we go. Yep, that's not happy. These are apparently too long for these sorts of turns. Anything shorter? Let's just throw a caboose on there. Maybe a tank car. Sorry, I'm just fiddling around. Slowing down a little bit. There we go. So, that is it working on Minecraft tracks. Sorry, Neon. Looks like if you just joined, you missed the most of the stream, though it has been recorded, and yeah, you should be able to replay kind of what I went over. This is just ridiculous. So, you can kind of sort of do this now. But I think I'm going to end the stream here. But I appreciate you all for tuning in, and ooh, that broke. And hope you tune in for the next one. Hopefully the next one will be more, I guess, Minecraft and feature development. And I'll be a little bit more with it. Anyways, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.